Welcome to Swedenborg Live. Today we are dealing with anxiety. I mean, that's the name of the show, but who isn't dealing with a little bit of anxiety? What this show is meant to do, though, is by getting people together who are trying to pursue what is right and good. Some would say spiritual, but we're not trying to sound pretentious. We form community and actually help each other achieve our sort of mental, emotional goals. So the way we're going to do that today is we're going to chat about whatever you want to talk about. Get your questions into the chat, and we're gonna riff on them, and we're gonna form that community to lift each other up. And I'm gonna be doing that with some really awesome people, as per always. Let's hear just who these mystery guests are.
Hi, everybody. It's Chelsea Odner, and I am happy to be here and get to spend another hour responding to questions.
Hello, I'm Karen Childs, community manager and writer here, and so happy to be here with you to have some good discussions.
And you might say, those guests, oh, we love them so much, but they often appear on the show. They weren't mystery guests. Well, today we have a very special feature for you. Because of the world of the coronavirus pandemic and us all adapting to a Zoom-based lifestyle, things like this happen where technology, we're pushing it to its limits. It doesn't quite cooperate. So we are going to have here today the voice of Cara Dom. Cara, can you say hello?
Hello, everybody. I'm here in the dark, but I'm really here.
And the cool thing is, as far as we can tell, like, it's not even clipping to her video, so you'll see one of us just hanging out on screen while Cara is talking, which I just think it's so worth getting her insight in that we're going to handle that little bit of internet awkwardness. Okay, all that said, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. You know, tech issues, all the technology we deal with to make these programs, all of that takes resources, and we are not for profit. So you can support us tonight. And actually, if you do, we'll give you an extra 15 minutes of questions. You may remember we were doing this 2-to-1 match where somebody, anonymous couple, donated $10,000, and every time you guys gave, they would double that, you know? Well, guess what? Proud to announce that we hit our goal. We actually got an anonymous contribution for $30,000. So with that, plus the other contributions, plus the match, a total of $45,000 went into Off the Left Eye's programming, and we are going to get serious about applying that to the mission and reaching the next person, as we always are. The mission is ongoing, though. So tonight we start fresh. If we can raise $100, which is smaller but means a ton to us, we'll do the extra 15 minutes. If you haven't donated before, consider it. Go to otle.cosvox.com. You'll see the little meter go up, and we'll give you extra questions if we can hit that. Will you make it happen for us? Thanks. Appreciate it. You know we got to raise money to do cool stuff, right? All right. Speaking of cool stuff, you guys gave really cool answers to our reflection question this week. Every week, we start hearing your answers before we give our answers. Our question was, what areas of your life do you find the most anxiety popping up around? Karen, what did the people have to say?
Here are some condensed versions of the wonderful responses you gave, and I'm holding you all tenderly in my heart because it's just sharing your vulnerabilities with us. So here are condensed versions of your answers. The death of my youngest child and another very sick with an undiagnosed condition. I feel anxiety about my family and fear another loss. Aww. Dealing with a very stressful family, the loss of my wife's oldest son, politics, and 2020. My building is becoming luxury condos, and I'm not sure I can still live there. Trying to maintain balance when the world and politics give me anxiety. My son's depression, which is very bad at the moment. Financial. Work, being around people, money, survival. When I have to do things for myself instead of for others. Work and socializing. Anxiety used to haunt me, but love and wisdom give me faith and peace. Rejection causes me anxiety, but I don't fear it and now embrace it. I don't like work anymore and feel anxious all week, starting on Sundays. After past events, I am haunted with fears of being powerless again. I doubt my own attempts to be good, whether my attempts create more harm than help, or if I'm only doing it for credit. I doubt this is from me, but it is as powerful as though it were. That's easy. Am I damaging my kids irreparably? I started taking classes to be an interior designer and now work part-time. We are moving. I am anxious at work, but I know it'll be over. But I need to cope until then. I worry about my family and my work. And I have for years struggled with anxiety over inner sexual desires that go against what I know to be good and true. Waiting on God. I work on acceptance, understanding impermanence, and practicing compassion for everyone, even me. Looking to the Lord for enlightenment, study and ask questions, find peace in His word. Finances, aging. I worry about still being able to do what I need to do. And finally, driving and parking the car. This always gives me the opportunity to pray. Wow, thank you so much. Such a mixture of outer situations and inner situations.
Yeah, and people are really opening up, and that's real. And what I was saying in the beginning, community is important to us getting where we want to go. How did that change your mindset just hearing those rattled off? Doesn't it remind you, wow, yeah, people are dealing with a lot of stuff, or I've dealt with something similar to that. So we so appreciate you guys being willing to share that little bit. And this week we're digging into not how we can say those situations shouldn't make you anxious, but how can we mitigate and ease some of the suffering we have around these inevitable hard events. And if you want to hear myself and Chelsea answer this question, check out our podcast Inside Off the Left Eye coming up on Sunday. The episode is The Moment Swedenborg Learned Spirits Can Read Thoughts. So that's an awesome piece of content hosted by Chelsea, and you'll get to hear us respond to the same question. Speaking of questions, I think we've got some. Let's get to what's on all of your minds. This is the first one. Valentino Shiro asks, I would like to know what is happiness and how can it be achieved and maintained? And I think since we made such a big hullabaloo about Cara Dom's voice, let's let Cara take a crack at this one. And I just want to preface it by saying it's a fairly important question. It's like the core of life. So let's see if we can get some answers. Cara, what do you think?
I promise I won't sing anymore. Well, I think Swedenborg has a very bold answer to this. He dares to say that the happiness in heaven of all things comes from being of use to other people, and that actually causes the happiness of heaven. So assuming we can get a taste of that while we're still on earth, finding a way that you belong, you can, I mean, we talk about feeling a sense of belonging, and that's because you have something to contribute that is unique and something that can help the people around you. So finding a way to explore how somebody could do that. How could I be useful to other people? How can I just be helpful? How can I serve the community I'm in? Would go a long way to feeling happiness and maintaining it, I think.
That's great. And it's so tangible. It's so cool that Swedenborg had such a tangible answer. And I think about it like you've got a number of plants in your front yard, and they're all about chest height. And you think, which one of these is going to grow into a huge tree? And if you don't know the plants, there could be one that tops out about there, and there's one that could be like a tulip tree or an oak and just get huge. And it seems like we've got in our lives, as we look out, these different pleasure sources. And what Swedenborg lets us know is there's some that can grow into this. In the question, she used the word maintain, this perpetual joy, that a lot of the stuff we chase as joy, status, reputation, gratification, that will never grow into something you can really live on. Whereas this usefulness, which even may seem like a little sapling, like, is that really going to go anywhere? Sometimes I feel like it's nice that actually can expand. That is like a redwood sapling waiting to grow up. It's so cool. Chelsea, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I love what Cara said, and I was thinking about how, in that sort of discernment in ourselves of like, how can I be useful or what can I do? What what you're really beginning to ask yourself is, how can I do the Lord's will in my life? You know, or like you're starting to participate in the Lord's will for your life. And when we, you know, when we just go out and start doing something, the Lord's going to lead us, and we're going to, like, what we initially started doing might not be what we end up doing, but it was that interest and thought that we gave at the beginning is enough to start that process of like engagement with the Lord, and then the Lord can lead us. And so our whole sense of what is making us happy will probably change from when we start the journey to the end. And that's kind of a part of it, is that it is that happiness is something that is, we can grow in that, in a wisdom and understanding and experience of that. And that's what we're being invited to on this, you know, partnership with the Lord in life.
I love that simplification of that. Look towards where the Lord is going to send you, because there's a million avenues that could lead to our individual happiness. But the first step is finding the guide, and then the guide is going to take you there. So I love that. Karin, do you have any thoughts on happiness? Hopefully you've thought about happiness from time to time.
Yeah, I absolutely think that is at the core. And I've seen that corroborated in articles about psychology, that people find happiness and fulfillment when they find ways to make a positive difference in a bigger, you know, in a bigger picture way in the lives of others in some way. And that I think I guess it was in this Monday's show, Curtis, that you were talking about just, well, this idea that looking for the way the Lord can use you that day, you know, that's like a protection from anxiety, and really just finding ways to be of service or make a positive difference each day. And it can be in little ways and small, big ways and small. Just like Chelsea was saying, just see where the Lord leads you that day. That really builds a protection against anxiety over time. That, of course, part of happiness is being freed from things that block happiness, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about anxiety. And involved in all that is connecting with God. And so, you know, ultimately doing that, serving other people, looking at how you can be part of making a positive difference in life. That's connecting with God too. And so trusting, the more we can just trust that God will lead us that day, you know, each day, also builds this protection against the various storms that attack the mind. So I think all of those ways are ways to build and maintain happiness.
Yeah, I love it. That great input, everyone, and cool to have such an on-brand answer. Like the Swedenborg is like, where is the happiness? Is right rolled into everything else. So that's exciting. Hopefully that's something that serves you well, Valentine. And thank you so much for asking the question. We love it. Hey, let's keep our streak going. We've been doing this. We'll raise 100 and do extra 15 minutes for many of these shows, and we've never once not hit it. So can today be the day that we don't break the streak? otle.causebox.com. Even if it's just a few dollars, that means a lot to us. Appreciate it. Go there and help us do what we do. Next question. Nana Rosebud asks, anxiety is defined as an attack in psychology. So an anxiety attack, right? So is anxiety then driven by spiritual forces attacking you and then upsetting the imbalance of your functioning? Or is it all a chemical imbalance? Is it, well, maybe not nature or nurture, but nature or spirit stuff? Or which I mean, can you really say there's nothing spiritual to it when Swedenborg and so many others are saying, you know, there's this really key factor coming from the other side? But then again, can you really throw away everything we're learning about the brain and how much it affects our conscious experience? What do you think, everybody? Does anyone want to lead off on this one? Yeah, Chelsea.
Sure. We have a show that's called our How Spirits Are Connected to Your Health. And that was a really interesting one, that the research that we did for that show just has stayed in my mind, because we really dug into this whole dynamic between how does the spiritual world interact with our physiology, our just ongoing work of our body that we're doing, that's happening all the time. And one principle in Swedenborg is that the spiritual is always flowing into the physical, like that's the physical is the container and the spiritual is flowing in. But that doesn't necessarily mean that when we have anxiety, it's like a attack from a spiritual force against you. It can be that spirits who just are in the state of anxiety spiritually in the spiritual world, are wrapped up or feed off of that sort of a state. If the circumstances of our life, or even just the chemical makeup of our body on a given day is making us more likely to experience anxiety, something about what Swedenborg is saying is that our bodies can be in a state to essentially receive that anxiety, or have the two match together, so that so what we experience as anxiety does have some spiritual, it will always have some spiritual counterpart and a physical world counterpart. So there really isn't one or the other. But even with the spiritual aspect, that doesn't mean that it's like another principle that Swedenborg describes is that oftentimes, or even all the time, but there can be exceptions to this, is that spirits have no idea that they're impacting you. They would like to if they knew that they had that kind of proximity, but that they're just off being their own anxious selves or whatever. And then we kind of end up crossing spheres and can get kind of in that cloud space. But Swedenborg did experience, like, he had some more conscious awareness and had crossed that barrier in a way where he was really aware of, oh, there are spirits really attacking me. So anyway, those are some initial thoughts.
Yeah, it's holistic. We got to look at it holistically, because just like physically, there are so many interconnected systems. You can't really say, well, here's the reason why you have a headache. It's just this thing. It's usually this layers of physical systems on top of physical systems. I'm having to do, if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear me talking about, I'm having to do all this, like rebuilding my diet. And there's so many factors. They're like, why did this trigger me in this way? Well, this is because you're eating too much of this, but you weren't getting enough of that. And did you know that this is reactive to that? There's so much going on. And that the spiritual is yet another layer in there. And at times the spiritual is a driver. At times it's all integrated like that. Another show that's a resource is, we just did one called Spirits Cause Anxiety, where you will hear a little bit of Swedenborg's experiences that Chelsea was alluding to, these direct experiences with spirits. So that's, if you want to click on that as soon as this show is done. Hey, Kara's voice. What do you think? Is it spiritual or chemical, or what's going on?
Sure seems like a mix to me. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to what you guys are saying, but acknowledging the spiritual component can be real powerful, I think. I think I've said this before, but somebody pointed out to me that the story of Rumpelstiltskin is a powerful picture of this, where this poor little pretty girl was in trouble and she had to spin straw into gold, and there was this creature guy who kept making her do things she didn't want to do, but as soon as she could name him, he disappeared. So working on naming, as soon as she found out that his name was Rumpelstiltskin, all his power was gone. So working on naming these whatever negative forces are causing you to feel anxiety, and just naming it as, that's not me, that's something outside of me, I see you and you're not welcome.
That's so cool. It's true. The relief that comes with identifying a cause. I was just thinking recently, having some issues and have getting like sort of headaches and scratchy throat. Is this related to something else? Ragweed. Like just learning, oh, that's peaking right now. This may actually be unrelated to the other stuff you're experiencing. So cool. Also that, I'm suddenly having these problems eating this stuff. Oh, there's different kinds of sugars, and you can metabolize some with problems. You can starting to name physical stuff is like, oh, so great. And to have, you're so right, that Rumpelstiltskin moment to say, oh, there's this, and now even if it's still present, it doesn't cause the same kind of anxiety.
So true. So true.
Yeah, Karin, you have any thoughts as we're kicking this around?
Yeah, that leads into that naming. It leads into what I was going to say, that when anxiety kicks up, it can be really helpful to identify what's making me vulnerable right now, because it can be physical things or it can be mental, emotional things, which are from spirits. And so, and situations. So you might have, might be like, I'm really tired. I didn't sleep well, so I'm more vulnerable to anxiety. Or, yeah, I ate something that didn't agree with me, or like you say, an allergy. Or there can be realizing there's these certain fears that make me more vulnerable, or situations that make me more vulnerable to these attracting the spirits, like Chelsea was saying, that make them come closer, and we feel this attack. So there are both physical and spiritual situations that make us more vulnerable to anxiety. And so to identify those can help, because then you can sometimes do something, talk to somebody if it's a mental, emotional thing, or change something physical. Because when it's mental, emotional things going on that are making you more vulnerable, there are ways we can change our perspective. And so that is actually building up this protection, like I was mentioning before, against these attacks. And it's interesting, Chelsea was mentioning the spirits just being in the vicinity and not even realizing we're there much of the time, and that just being attracted to our emotions and things going on in our bodies. And that's mostly the case in the way the Lord set up the protection. But there are also the cases like in schizophrenia and things where the barrier has been broken, and the spirits do get aware, and so they are doing a direct attack. And so that's a little bit different situation, and that's where there can be other methods that kind of can build up your or lessen your vulnerability to those voices, and not have to believe everything they're saying. So that's just another situation I know people find themselves in. But either way, just looking at what's making you vulnerable. Is it physical? Is it mental and emotional? And that can help build up a little immunity to these anxiety storms that are swirling around, these spirits.
Yeah, great reminder that nobody's particular condition is exactly like anybody else's, physically or spiritually. So we can give you some good guideposts, and then it's going to be your journey of continuing to figure out what works and getting help and making progress and stepping back and making progress. And we wish you the best, and we're here with you as we go on the journey. So, hey, let's move to our next question. This is Eleni Adams-Johns, who asks, how do we help our breathing when we are having anxiety? 1, 2, 3, 4, in, hold for 4, exhale for 8. I've also heard it called square breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, stay exhaled for 4. Those are a really good, quick thing to do. Chelsea, I want to kick it to you first, because I know you were just doing some research on stuff like this for an upcoming show, right?
Yeah, I was. And super fun to get a question like this, because there's a lot of interesting stuff to think about from Swedenborg, and how it ties into what just modern science's understanding about how we can help, how breathing can affect our anxiety. And one thing is our diaphragm is innervated by the vagus nerve, and that's this core nerve that's connected with our parasympathetic nervous system. And that's the nervous system, that's the mode that our nervous system can get into when we're relaxed and feeling safe enough to digest our food and things like that. Whereas the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight, pushes blood to the peripheries of your body and stuff. And so that's one physiological way that balancing your breathing and doing focused belly breathing, or what's called diaphragmatic breathing, can calm you down if you do it for like 30 seconds or a minute. And it's like what Curtis was saying, of just a steady, slow inhale with an even exhale. So your inhale and exhale are even with each other. But what's really cool about that is that Swedenborg says that our lungs and breath corresponds to our thoughts, whereas our heart and blood pressure and stuff corresponds to love and desires and everything. And so there's this like core connection between thoughts and our breathing. And then we see that our breath is so associated with how to manage anxiety. Or when we're in an anxious state, we feel out of control of our breathing, or we can't take a deep breath or something. And so there are little tricks. Like one little trick is just actually to exhale more fully than you think you should. Because sometimes when you're getting in an anxious state, you're taking in too much oxygen rather than, and so that your body's getting the message, I already have enough oxygen, I don't need to breathe more, and so actually if you let out more breath, that can cue your body to come back into a more balanced state. But I think that's so interesting because exhaling is like this surrendering. And when I think with our thoughts, when we just let go of the thoughts, or just stop believing what the thoughts are telling us with any of these things that we've been talking about so far in the show, that actually can, I've observed it in myself where I have an immediate physiological response in my body when my thoughts change, when I've clearly disengaged from a sort of thought cloud that has me believing some anxious thing. And when I pull my head out of that, or like with some other thought, get a different perspective, maybe it's my shoulders relax, or I can suddenly take a more deep breath. And so I think you can use that tool of paying attention to your thoughts and acknowledging if whatever the anxiety thoughts are, just say that's anxiety, those are thoughts that I'm having, and choose a different thought and see how that helps your breathing. And then, or you go the route of focusing on the breath and that changing your mental state as well. So you can kind of do both.
So many good tools in there. Thanks so much, Chelsea, for handing those out to us and giving that to think about. I want to say that, just pause for a second here to say I was having anxiety a second ago because we were halfway through the show and 0% of the way to our goal. And that's like, is that just spirits, or is it because we're halfway? But I want to say thank you to Jennifer, who with her gift put us right on track. We are now exactly halfway to our goal and being able to get those extra 15 minutes. So thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer has done half the lifting. If we can just get some other people to pitch in, we're getting there. Thank you so much. Oh, okay, never mind. It's over. Bernard gave 100. We're up to 150. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Bernard.
Amazing.
And then Gloria just donated. So now we're at 165. What was I so anxious about? Oh, wait, I'm supposed to learn to trust God or something instead. Appreciate it, guys. We joke around about it, but every single life that we've ever touched has only been possible because of contributions. So yes, we love to get to do it, but it's all of you powering all the impact that's happened in everyone's life that this has touched. So thank you so much, everybody. And we're going an extra 15. We're going to be there. And so let's stretch this one out. Just kidding. But this question is so key. I mean, obviously we've done these 2 shows on anxiety. It's something near and dear to my heart, trying to alleviate that. So I just really appreciate what you guys have shared so far. Karin, you want to offer some thoughts?
Well, that was all great stuff Chelsea was saying. I think the only thing I'll add is it's fascinating. I want to study it a little more in what Swedenborg says, but different kinds of breathing that he experienced would connect him with different groups in the spiritual world. So there were kinds of breathing that would get him more in touch with angels, and kinds of breathing that would be more in touch with lower spirits. And it's just fascinating to think about. And I think some of the tools that Chelsea was talking about is really doing that. but we don't, it would be cool to learn a little bit more about that. So, but it's a wonderful concept.
Awesome. Yeah, Cara, did you have anything final? I can't remember if I asked you on this question or not. We're doing a lot of questions in a row.
No. That was cool to learn from Chelsea's research. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, and the link between that Chelsea alluded to, the link between breathing and the spiritual world, that we could do many, many millions of shows on that, because there was so much Swedenborg said about the lungs and the spiritual world. So good to get to scratch the surface a little bit there. Hey, I'm excited for this next one. Joe D asks, what is the good of having spirits have access to influencing us at all? This never sticks for me.
Yeah.
We've got a problem here. Like, you're telling me Swedenborg is telling us about this worldview and it's so great, it makes everything make sense. This thing is sticking out. Why do we have these spirits around in the first place? And it's like a fly in the ointment. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem intuitive. It doesn't seem divine. I want to just open briefly. I know I usually kick it off. I will in just a second, but I want to frame it by saying, what's the use of allowing microorganisms into our body at all? They cause disease, right? Right now we've got this whole pandemic that is caused by a virus. I don't know if it's an organism or what. But on the flip side, if you didn't have a whole host of microbes, of positive microbes in your gut, on your skin, everywhere, we would die. We never could have evolved in the first place. So that's a cool starting point for me, is to think we're looking at this system when it gets out of whack, but it's meant to do some very important things. And Karin, do you want to open up on what sorts of things this system can provide?
Yes, that's really great that you're starting with pointing out that there is a system that was created to be a very good thing, but it just got hacked. And so it's not the system that's the problem, it's the hackers in there. And I wanted to start out by saying, if there weren't spirits around us, we would not be able to feel any pleasures or have any thoughts. That's something I get from Swedenborg. And he even had experiments sometime teaching him this, that where like God somehow like disconnected him from spirit communities, and he couldn't think, and he couldn't even, it was like he was almost dead. Like there was nothing going on in his mind. And the thing is, creation was created to be a completely interconnected thing. And if you just think about us as each little cells in a body, there's not a cell that can survive without this interconnectedness. And it was created so that good things can be flowing through it all. And you can also think of the internet, like there's all sorts of problems that can happen through the internet, but it's such a good thing for keeping us connected all around the world. So the fact that there are hackers in there doesn't mean that it's not a very important, useful system for getting us connection and thoughts and things. And if you go watch our show called The Angels and Evil Spirits with Us, we just go through a brief explanation of how in the beginning, humanity was created, and they were very in tune with heavenly pleasures and heavenly thoughts. And so that's how God flowed through them, and they were all interconnected. But as humanity gradually lost interest in higher pleasures, we still had to have a way that life gets to us. So there started to be people started being a little more self-centered and materialistic. And so pleasures got lower and lower. But if we didn't have this connectedness, no life, no thought, no pleasure at all could have gotten to us. So God had to accommodate and allow the pleasure to flow through these lower and lower spirits just to continue to get life to us and thought, any ability to think, any ability to feel pleasure. So as we collectively choose to clean up allow God to clean up the system again, the spirits around us will get better and better. And as we do that, regenerate individually, we get better and better spirit associations anyway, and we'll have less and less hackers bothering us. And that, most of that will be apparent in the next life. But anyway, so there's what I have to say about that.
Really, really important to point out that it's part of an essential infrastructure, that it's not just spirits can come in and conversate with us like people, but this is part of the mechanics of consciousness. Chelsea, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, right. Like that is interesting to think that it really is this core part of consciousness. And like, I feel like it's easy to imagine that, well, I have my thoughts and then spirits are having their thoughts and they're coming in and influencing my thoughts. But with what Karin is saying, from what Swedenborg learned, and actually we, in the podcast this Sunday is when we talk about the moment that Swedenborg learned, whoa, spirits are like in my head. It's not like they're this core part of how consciousness works. Like that's the moment that we're exploring in the podcast. But so it's really that there's this unity of like the stuff of thoughts is spiritual in nature in terms of how it's shared with spirits all the time. And that's how we, without the connection to spirits, Swedenborg learned he couldn't think, because there were no, because that connection is so deep. And one way that maybe will help make sense of this, because it's helped me, is just there's this cool idea that way Swedenborg puts it, that he says that, the life that's flowing into us from the Lord, or our experience of consciousness, there's this, the way it's designed is that anything that enters our consciousness, we experience as if it's coming from ourselves. All of our thoughts are, I'm thinking this thing. And so that's this essential like filter that happens. So all of those thoughts, any thought we have is actually coming in from outside of us, even though we always experience it as our own. And that's the way the design is meant to be. And it's kind of one of those, like, you can't get away from your own shadow, sort of it's just the way it is. Like you can't see behind that mechanism that's making it you. And so in a sense, you don't have to worry about the fact that, oh, spirits are influencing my thoughts, because that's just always happening. And what that knowledge can do for us, though, is let us realize I don't have to believe everything I think, and I don't have to, just because I'm thinking it, I can say, do I want to make this thought me, or say, no, that's not me? Like we're allowed to choose to keep it or reject it. And that's kind of that's how we develop who we are in this world. So.
Yeah, really cool to think about what you're describing there as the observer effect, that you can observe your own thoughts and feelings. So there's some space in between you and them. And I think about like an infant little newborn who just can't do anything. Doesn't even know, like you see them try to move their arm and it's just flapping around. Like there's the motor skills, everything. They're just barely learning how to open their eyes. I think like in our inner self, as it slowly starts to wake up, is like the process you're describing, because when we're just going and one desire and thought is just pouring into the next, and we're really kind of asleep in this sort of like ego mode, that's before birth. But then as we start to say, well, wait a second, I want to consider, even though I'm feeling this as mine and hearing it thought-wise as mine, is this good and true? And so maybe I can push away. That's like our first little flap our little arms out. It's just cool to think about that development. Hey, speaking of spirits, I call on the disembodied voice of Kara. Do you wanna weigh in while I do my reaction to what you're saying?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, that concept that Chelsea was just talking about the ability to detach from what's going on in our own hearts and minds. I think that is such a phenomenal gift that I didn't get till I was a few decades into life. But the freedom that gives you, that I am not what I think, or I don't have to believe what I think, is such a huge gift. So to me, that is a big good, Jody, that I can not be what's in my head. Yeah, that's it.
Love it. That's great. And I want to close with, and this has been alluded to, but making the clear point that we've established definitely that, look, there's a system. Overall, it's good. it has the potential for mismanaged activity, and so this negativity gets through. Even the negativity is good for us, which may seem utterly like a terrible thing to say, but Swedenborg is asserting that everything that is permitted to happen only happens if some good can become out of it. And actually, I can think of, I'm Curtis and I'm good, and the problem is I have these anxiety spirits and things coming through. But actually, I've got all kinds of bad, domineering, negative tendencies in myself. Everybody does. And we've all got different ones, but they all fit generally under love of our own reputation and then sensory or earthly gratification. And if I never had those stirred up or had to confront or had my ego life disrupted by this stuff, I would die spiritually. I wouldn't be able to go to heaven. That we have some show coming up somewhere where we're talking about you cannot go to heaven without spiritual trials. You've got to have these episodes. We're not saying every anxiety episode is a spiritual trial, but the negative spirits that are coming in, they are strengthening us. I mean, we do talk in an upcoming show about the immune system, and that if a child never gets exposed to the common cold and other pathogens, they can't build an immune system that functions. And you might say, well, if there were just no germs at all, you wouldn't need it. But we've got the germs inside of us already, right? We've got these spiritual tendencies towards what is evil without being shaken out of our attachment to them. We couldn't. We would not be able to do the heaven thing. So it's totally a pain, and there's way more interference than I think there probably needs to be in a perfect world, but it is doing something good. Otherwise, it would be stopped. God would stop it. So there's a little start on that conversation. Hey, let's do more. Why would we stop now? This one is cool, and I hope we have a good answer for it. I actually am quite interested to hear what all of you say.
Yeah.
This is Eric Rockham, who asks, aside from going book by book, have you guys used any general daily, weekly Swedenborg approaches or study plans that you found particularly rewarding? Oh, I definitely do the one where, this is such a cool quote, I got to remember it for next time, and then I forget it. I got to compile these and read these every day, and then I sort of forget. Do you guys have anything beyond that, or?
That's a good plan.
What do you do, Chelsea?
Let's see. Well, there are a lot of great, I guess you'd call it collateral Swedenborgian literature out there where people have compiled books that are kind of like, you read the book progressively and it gives you little things to think about or things to do at the end of each chapter. And so they're often designed to be weekly, or you spend as much time as you want on each chapter while you practice the task or the, spiritual exercise of that week. And one I would definitely put a plug in for is called Observing Spirit by Peter Rhodes. That I've done that one a few times because it's worth keep going back to and re-emphasizing the principles in there, and which I really enjoy. And these study plans, and there's just a number of ones out there. There's a book called Rise Above It that's about practicing the 10 Commandments from a Swedenborgian perspective. And so those are a couple of plugs from me. I'm interested what other people have.
No, that's great. And before I forget, that made me think of Begin a New Life, which is, I think, beginningnewlife.info or .org. So this is,
or even .net, maybe. I don't know.
We gotta look this up. But that is done by a man named Mark Pendleton, and he took this passage as part of Swedenborg's writings and put it into this really systematic approach that I got to get familiar with one time when I was at a conference with him, and it's just very potent and powerful. It's the kind of, I should be doing that every day, but I forgot.
Right. Yeah, and that's like taking the 4 steps of repentance, I think, right? And turning it into just like a daily spiritual practice.
Or even a momentary one.
Yeah.
You can do this right now when this pops up. It really becomes this thing you have in multiple sizes. You can fit in your pocket. Nice. You can have one in your living room. It's cool stuff. So Yeah. Other resources. Cara, do you have any that spring to mind?
Yes. Well, first of all, it's beginanewlife.info.
Oh, none of it weird at all. Yeah, good.
So that's cool. The thing that comes to mind is just at Christmas time. I know there's often people put out like a daily reading to prepare for the Christmas season, and you can find ways to get that through church bookstores and things. And that's just the one that comes to mind. So I know there are daily readers or weekly readers of various kinds, but no title is coming to mind, I'm afraid.
No problem. And this is too like an area that I'd love to expand into. I mean, we talk about in upcoming shows these meditation sort of lifestyle apps that are out there where they'll take you through your daily meditation. They have these other accessible resources. I think one thing we want to continue to do in our project here off the left eye is develop more and more effective ways for people to use the content on a daily basis. So coming soon, we should have something like that. So Karin, do you have anything in the meantime?
I know there are some compilations of by topic that the Swedenborg Foundation has. There's one about regeneration, quotes from different books of Swedenborg about regeneration. And there's one on the 10 Commandments, just taking sections from different books. And there's one, I think, about the lives of angels. So the Swedenborg Foundation does have some books that are compilations of quotes from Swedenborg from different books, if you're interested in one of those topics. For myself, even though Eric asked, besides going book by book, my favorite thing is to go book by book. I like to just take a book of Swedenborg's and just read no more than 2 pages at a time, and don't worry about understanding everything that I am reading. Just read, it could be 1 or 2 pages, or even one paragraph if you'd rather. But my favorite thing to do is just read that limited amount, not worry about understanding everything that I'm reading, but see what jumps out at me, see what strikes me. And that's my favorite thing, because I just find, though I've read all these books before, every time I'm reading one, I'm reading Divine Providence right now, and it just feels like a new book to me, because every time I read it, it just feels fresh, because whatever state I'm in, I'm noticing different things that are like, oh, cool. Did I know that before? And so that's my recommendation. Just if you want to just try a book, just small amounts, and just see what jumps out at you.
Well, that's a great way to put it, that you're in a different state, so the book seems different to you. I felt that so distinctly, and I think the time that was the most obvious to me was there's a video on our channel called A Day Trip to the Afterlife, where I was giving a talk about heaven and hell. And for that, I had to go to Swedenborg's Heaven and Hell, which is the book that probably most people have read the most. And I just thought I'll just be reviewing this for this talk. And it just felt like everything was brand new. And I think it's because I was looking at it in a focused way. But yeah, I was in different states as we grow. This, I think, is evidence of the depth of wisdom in Swedenborg's books, is that you don't grow out of them, you grow into them. You grow, they mean more to you the smarter and wiser that you get. So that's cool. Thanks, Eric, for asking that question. Chelsea, did you want to finish it off?
Yeah, I just have one other thing that is another one that I was like, oh yeah, this one that I love. The website's called choosejoynow.org. And so it's also put together by a Swedenborgian minister. And it's, you can actually get these little cards, so that it's like a little task for a card. But at the website, there's, for each one, there's selected readings and then reflections on those readings, and then a task for you to think about for that week. So it's sort of like you could shuffle the deck and pick one to focus on for the week, and have kind of a little dip into a different topic with readings from Swedenborg and prompted reflections and stuff. So
that's cool. Who made that?
It's Sunrise Chapel, Frank Rose.
No way.
And it's a great, and I think they also offer even maybe some virtual, spiritual growth groups that use these tasks together. Like they're sort of designed to be able to do it together as a group and go do tasks with people.
That's great. Frank Rose, father of Dr. Jonathan Rose, who you may all be familiar with. Great guy. So many amazing things that he's produced. All right. Hey, let's do some more talking. I mean, it's so fun to jump genre of question, but it's the same spirit in each of these. I love the tie together. Hey, this is a good pivot here. Now 3 asks, even if I know I should do this, I make so many not good things. I know Jesus will love me anyway, but why can't I be a better person? Question. Look, I know I shouldn't do this. Okay, I'm get forgiven, but I have a personal wish to just get over this hump. So what advice can we give now 3 who's struggling or feeling like maybe they're struggling more than they should, or that they should be doing better by now? Does anyone want to kick it off? Sure, Corin.
I would say if you're feeling that way, I am sure you're doing much better than you think. Because if you care about wanting to be better, that is a huge part of the journey. And places in Swedenborg talk about that the process of letting go of our negativity and our ego stuff is a very gradual thing. Speaking of reading in Divine Providence, I was reading this fascinating section that I wasn't understanding all of, but it's how evil is removed from us, or how we are freed from evil. And it's a very gradual process. It's just like one little feeling, one little thought, and then it has to be, the Lord is somehow like bunching this together and then purging that little part of it and this little part of it. And so Swedenborg says what we think of as just like one thing, one feeling or one thought is actually this very complex thing that needs to be just gradually and gently untangled from our spirits, or gradually put to sleep. And so every time it comes up, some of that work is being done. And you might think, oh, I'm just doing the same thing again and again and again. But that is actually not true. Every time it comes up, you're in a little different part of the journey. And part of what we have to be getting to really allow the Lord to free us from these things is building up so that we're completely disgusted with it. Because I know I've read places where like we don't really let go of things until we really just like, I really don't like this. And I know for myself, there can be negative habits that I have that, I know I shouldn't do that, but I can feel there's still a pleasure in that. And so it has to get, you really have to get sick of it to really let go of it, if you know what I mean. So every time it comes up, it's an opportunity for you to notice it again and to get more clear on that you don't want it. And that is really a more gradual process than we realize, because these things are very embedded in our lower egos from heredity and from early life. And it just takes time. And I think you need to be patient with yourself. We all need to be patient with ourselves. The Lord is so patient with us. And so every time it comes up and you go, oh, not again, just realize, just notice it and pray to the Lord for help with that. And don't be discouraged, because this is just the process. And it's very normal for, as you're starting really getting into the phases of spiritual growth, that you'll notice more negativity, like you didn't even notice it before. So noticing it is actually a very good sign. And so don't be discouraged. Just every time think, okay, Lord, here it is. Help me, and don't be discouraged. You're on a very good path.
Hey, I did good Zoom etiquette, and I muted myself and paid the price. Suddenly this like, you are muted thing comes up in the middle of the screen. But I made it. I was gonna say, it's very encouraging, or very comforting to think, yeah, it's just this process. And the vacillation that all regeneration, you go through something hard, and then you're in of truth and out of truth, and in truth and out of truth, just like the waves on the beach. That's just this universal rhythm that, yeah, right. Oh, I've gotten past this issue. No, you haven't gotten all the way past it. It's just amazing to think about. Cara, I'd love to hear from you and see your smiling face.
You have to wait on that second one. Yeah, a few thoughts on this. First of all, just acknowledging that the concerns and the desires associated with just living on this earth are so powerful, and they are something to deal. That's kind of a burden that we have to carry all along. And Swedenborg says when we get to the spiritual world, a lot of them just fall away. The earthly concerns just fall away. So, yep, we need to work on the things and everything, but some of your quote unquote failings might be relieved when you're done with your body. Another thing that comes to mind in relation to what Curtis just said about the ins and outs and the ups, the back and forth of it all. Even Jesus went through the backing and forthing of a little progress and a little fallback, a little progress, a little fallback. In the old translation, those words were states of exinanition and glorification. And I just love saying exinanition. So,
Yeah, worth it.
And it just periods when he felt not connected to the divine, and then periods when he felt, moving towards connection with the divine. So that too, it's just an example of that's the way the human condition is. The divine human even went through that, doing good and doing not so good. Another thing that Swedenborg says is that if you keep one commandment, you keep them all. And that's encouraging, that even if you feel like you're doing stuff that's not so great in one arena, but you didn't lie to your boss today, that's progress. That helps. And the last thing, just to reflect on something that Karin said about, you have to go over and over and over it again until you really don't like it anymore. You're really so sick of it that then you're really ready to let go of it. I had something I was dealing with once, and I was not, even though I thought I wanted to let go of it, I really didn't want to let go of it. But I had a dream that showed like what would happen if that thing went to its full extent. And I was so horrified that it was like an instant, I was done. Okay, I'm done, Lord. Thank you. And then that wasn't a problem for me anymore. But just keep working on it. And I agree with Karin. If you want to be in a better place, you're on a good track.
That's great. So many useful, tangible things in there. Thank you, the ghost of Caradom. We really appreciate that. Yeah. Other thoughts, Chelsea? Yeah.
Yeah, and just I just think what a Christmas Carol moment there, Cara. That's awesome. Yeah, such great thoughts. And so I just have some others that kind of feed into what I've been hearing you guys say. And one is that like Swedenborg says that it's a part of our spiritual growth process that, Jesus went through too, like Cara said, but we have an inner and outer self, and those two really start to do battle with each other. Like there really is this two different parts tug of war over which desire is going to win out. And there's the love of the I know I should do this, or having this desire for a different way of being. That's on the inside, and on the outside is all of our outer self concerns and all the pleasures and interests and stuff that we are just mired in on the outer self side. And so like one thing to like that the picture of the mind that Swedenborg develops is that we aren't just one thing. Like we have multiple eyes within us. I want to do this or I want to do that. There's actually lots of them in you, and so those different concepts of yourself are battling against each other. They don't agree with each other. So that's funny that we can have two senses of self that are disagreeing with each other, and that's because we have the heavenly one growing inside of us and the outer self or lower self part that's gonna become subservient to the inner self one. And so another way I've heard it phrased is just like you're caring about caring, and that's a good sign. Like you are wanting to why can't I be a better person, is that there is that part of yourself that wants to be a better person. So that means that inner self is like, it's got a good arm, it's gonna win this one eventually. So.
Yes, that's right. So hopefully now three, you feeling encouraged by all that, and keep up the good work. I would say, we would all say. I think you're going to continue to see progress, and you got Jesus and all the angels cheering you on. So, and thanks for asking the question. Hey, we're into our bonus round as of right now. Thank you to everybody who gave. You made this possible. It's not too late. I mean, sure, we've got our extra 15 minutes here, but the organization still goes on. We've still got our budgets for the year. We still got to raise funds. So anything you give now really does matter. otle.causevox.com. Thank you for giving us the ability to do this with all of you, to go and reach people and do some good. So the next question is from Rafe GB, who asks, why are near-death experiences different in the details among people? So why, if there's a truth out there, why isn't everyone just seeing the truth? You go to the DMV, everyone's going to stand in the same line, right? So why this variety in reported near-death experiences? Does anyone, since we're about to go into the near-death experience thing on this channel, does anyone want to open that up?
Sure,
Yeah, Karin.
I can start. The near-death experience is just a very first glimpse into the afterlife, and it's very affected by a person's state of mind and their belief system and what they need just at the moment. And Swedenborg describes that the Lord and angels are so gentle with where we're all starting from as we're entering the afterlife. And if even people who do die, not a near-death experience, but do cross over, things start out for them, their situation and their environment will very much match what they are comfortable with. And so it's not a shock. It's more important to the Lord that people feel safe and loved and comfortable as they're crossing over than that they get all misconceptions corrected. So that's one reason why in a near-death experience, which is even less, it's just a very small glimpse into the afterlife, that the experience will reflect what the person would be comfortable with or need right at that moment. And there is usually some message or something the person comes back with. And what's always most important is just something about learning the importance of love and just in whatever sort of belief system frame or what heaven looks like frame or whatever, it's just, that's the most important thing. So that's one element, but also the afterlife is full of tremendous variety. And if just a person had 15 from another planet had 15 minutes on Earth, wherever they landed, they would have very different stories of what Earth is like because Earth is a huge variety of things. So even more so in the afterlife, there's great variety in the afterlife, both in terms of environment and kinds of people, spirits, angels that you will meet. And so I'm sure that's also involved in the variety in the near-death experience phenomenon. But I think mainly when people think about why are they so different, I think they're thinking of like sort of different reports of how things work in the afterlife. I think that is mostly having to do with, there's variety, but also just what is not going to shock this person's system too much, what is just going to achieve a core message about love mainly in most cases, or if there is a negative aspect, what is something the person just needs to wake up to that's very important for their continued journey. So there's some thoughts.
Yeah, really, really important to, again, circle back to the idea that everybody's in their particular unique situation. Swedenborg even says that hell and heaven are never the same for any one individual. So it's based on where you are and what you need. So yeah, Chelsea, what do you think?
Just I think similarly, you can think about our dreams, and it's like we all everybody's dreams, like literally what you dream of at night, can be so different and so bizarre and unique to your experience. But we all experience dreams, and there's sort of different kinds of things that end up lining up with dreams. You know, even people having the same kinds of dreams for some reason, um, and the dream world again is a fascinating interface between our spiritual mind and our physical, state. And but so that's just maybe another way to think about it in terms of people can have wildly different dreams, but they're all dreaming. And so similarly, people are having these near-death experiences that really are a unique kind of spiritual experience. And it's going to be kind of custom tailored, and again, providence is over everything. And so that's a part of whatever that unique experience was, like what Karin was saying. And interestingly, like, again, this happens to be in this week's Inside Off the Left Eye podcast. We talk about the time that Swedenborg really first had a spiritual experience himself, in terms of it was a waking life vision of seeing a spirit. So it's like he never had a near-death experience, but it's kind of like the first of like the kind of thing he had, which was just these wakeful spiritual experiences. And it wasn't a light and this crowd of loving people and, this warm embrace. It was very kind of weird and confronting even. And so I won't even give it away. You'll have to listen to hear what exactly he sees and what is said to him. But so again, it's just an example of like, it doesn't just because they're wildly different or very weird or even negative. It's like, it's the spiritual world, and that's what you're sort of tapping into. And that's going to have a unique experience for each one of us.
Yeah. It's just like life, isn't it? It's often so puzzling why we are in the situations we're in. There's some chess being played in Providence that we don't quite see. And I guess, later you can look back and understand it, but why wouldn't that continue into our experiences of the spiritual world? Hey, will one of you ask Kara about it, so that, because I think we've been sitting on me for a long time while she talks. Maybe we give somebody else some screen time.
Sure. Kara, what are some thoughts you have about this question? I'd like to know.
What just comes to mind is the absolute individual care that the Lord has over all of our journeys. So whatever somebody experiences in their near-death experience is just what they need, and just what they, as something that's going to help them affect the others around them, so that the ripples will spread out. It just seems... one of my tasks these days is working on trusting that the Lord's taking care of all of us. So it's one of those, just trusting that experience for that person was exactly what the Lord needed to give them.
That's great. That's a great thing to wrap up on. Hey, I think we got time for one more. It'll be a little shorter than usual, but let's get another question in as we approach the end of the extra 15 minutes here. This is from EBX Bear, who asks, is there a notable feeling that lets you know you're headed in the right direction? How hard is it to determine if just your mind is giving you a false sense? Am I making any progress? Can somebody give me some kind of tracker I can put on this? Because there have been times in life where I'm really sure I'm doing something really good, and then no, it wasn't. It turned out I was in totally wrong direction, or so it seems. What can we tell EBX Bear? Karin.
I'd start by saying, trust in the process, that it's a journey, and a lot of, any kind of journey is you learn as you go, and you can have certain measurements that will help you along the way, like just the measurement that everything good is connected with love of God and love of the neighbor, love of others, love of the common good. And so you can try to measure things against that. Like, is this leading me in the direction of helping me to learn to love other people? Or am I feeling a reaction to trying to love other people? And that can just teach you something you need to get past. Or trusting God, so love of God, love of the neighbor is what we're trying to go towards. So try to reflect on if that's leading in that direction. And remember, intention, even if you like, okay, I want to love my neighbor this way, and then it doesn't work out, that's okay, because if your intention was leading you there, that's okay. Whatever sort of didn't work out, you will learn something from it, and God's going to help you get to the next step through that learning. And yeah, pay attention to results. You try something, what is the result? Because God is teaching you through the results. So we go forward as best we can, and with intention to get towards love of God and love of the neighbor, and then learn from what seems to lead you closer to that and what doesn't. And God will trust that God is going to take you step by step.
Yeah, that trust is so important. Yeah, and I think, again, that establishing that sense of what's right. I mean, Swedenborg refers to something that you could say is analogous to that, which is perception. That as we go and continue to regenerate, you start to know more and more what is true and what is good. But initially, you don't. There's the Garden of Eden story. They talk about naming the animals. And why do Adam and Eve name the animals? So that is a picture of being able to identify what's each thing in the mind and what's each path you can go down. So it's something that you don't have initially, but we're developing it, and good on you for looking for that. Does anybody have any closing thoughts on that, or do we get it all out?
I guess one thing that comes to mind, and I wasn't sure whether to say it or not, because it's just what popped to mind, even though I don't know how right on it is for this question, is just that a memorable sermon actually that Jonathan Rose gave years ago was this example, using the example of how if you're in a car and you're like wearing a mask, like you can't see any, or like a blindfold, first the car is just sitting still, and then it starts to move and you're getting bumped around and then it stops and you stop moving, and then it starts going again and you're bumping around, and that you might think it's when you're bumping around that something's going horribly wrong, and when you're sitting still, okay, things are good, I'm in a good place right now. But your perception of that is flipped, because the reality is that it's when you're getting jostled around that all this progress is being made, and it's these points of respite where you're paused and nothing's coming up. And that's kind of just a flip on sometimes when you're feeling like nothing, how could it's not the best feeling, but it is a feeling where it's like so much seems to not be going right now, or not so many things are making life feel hard, and you're like trying hard and stuff, but it's like that actually could be the stuff of you're really making some solid progress in your life, even if it feels like this can't be going anywhere. So I hope maybe that thought is helpful.
It's a great analogy. And it does strike me as we talk through it that for me, I don't think there is really a notable feeling, because I always am looking back, and I just was going through some old stuff, doing some attic cleaning out and going through some old stuff that I had written, when I'm 35 now, or maybe I was 20 or 18. And I just didn't understand life like I do now. I mean, all the things back then that I thought this is what I need and this is not what I need, I think totally differently than that now. And I just couldn't see that. You couldn't have ever pointed out to me the things that I now think are valuable, because I didn't have the context or the framework for it. So there were certainly things back then that I was able to get and make progress on, but there was so much that I didn't speak that language yet. So while there will be some things we can know we're going towards, I guess part of it is just trusting that we're slowly being taught a language that will allow us to recognize, the next conversation that we need to have. So that's great. Okay, guys.
Cara, yeah, you want to say something?
I just had to add in a couple of sentences. along what Chelsea was saying, I have had some mentors in my life, and a couple of them just used to bug me because they would tell me that the questions were more important than the answers. I didn't like that at all. But now that I'm old, I begin to see like there's something living in the quest and the effort and the process that if you're just told, oh, you're there, oh, you're good, oh, yep, this is it. There's the drive that doesn't exist anymore. So the question and the questing part is important.
I'm so glad you stuck up for yourself there, because that's the note we want to end on. The questions are better than the answers. And that applies to this show. The questions from all of you were better than the answers. Thank you so much, everybody, for
That's
watching.
our tagline. Yeah.
And for asking. Yeah, that is can be our new tagline. And thanks so much to everybody who donated. We had 4 donors who pulled us into this extra session, which was so appreciated. If you're watching this after the fact or right now watching live, you can give anytime. otle.causevox.com. It still goes into putting this forward. And if you've never given to us, and you do, just know there's a new donor raffle every month. So if you donate for the first time, you're entered into this raffle where we get you a great piece of OTLE swag. It's announced live on the air. So if that's not an incentive, then nothing is. Thanks, everybody. Hey, thanks, panel. Cara and Chelsea. Cara, it was great getting to spend this time with you.
Yeah, thanks. I really, really am grateful to get to be here and get to have this discussion time with you guys.
Thank you so much for all your questing questions. Have a wonderful week.
Yes, so fun to be the mystery guest. Carry on in your wonderful lives.
It's cool because you could just say whatever you wanted with no consequences, right? Because nobody knows who you are. Great. All right, thanks, everybody. Monday, we have a new episode coming out. The show must go on. Our Monday episode is named Howard Storm, Jeff Olson, Trisha Barker, and Swedenborg. Lessons from near-death experiences. This is where we got to talk to a lot of our friends, prominent members of the NDE community, and see where their daily lived experience of their near-death experiences, what they use from it every day, what that is, and how it syncs up with the things Swedenborg reported about this framework. So that question that we got about the details of the NDE, that's going to be addressed by it. Also, people asking, how do I continue to live better and better? That's going to be in there. It's going to be a great episode that's coming out this Monday. Don't miss podcast on Sunday. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.